Welcome to today's episode of NSA-New Mexico Speakers Corner. This is a 30-minute program where we talk with the members of the National Speakers Association who are members of our chapter here in New Mexico. And I am thrilled to have our speaker member, Eva Fanari, with us today. Hello, Eva.
Hello, Gail. Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here.
So tell us, what do you speak about?
Gail, I speak mostly about negotiations, conflict management, conflict de-escalation, and then also emotional self-regulation, which of course comes with this topic. And then aside of that, I also do public seminars on spiritual development.
So how did you get involved with this area of expertise?
That is a great question, Gail. I don't know if you were able to tell from my accent that I am not from New Mexico. Most likely you were able to say that, but I was born and raised in the Soviet Union, which is now Estonia, in the country that's Estonia in present day. And I am old enough to actually remember what it was like when the Soviet Union and the entire empire came collapsing down. It was fascinating and very memorable to see the conflict of two different ideologies, the democracy and dictatorship, essentially. And ever since, I've been fascinated by how our thought process creates conflict, how we de-escalate conflict, and about the general conflict of ideologies that still rules the world, right? Or the several conflicts still rule the world at large. We know this of, the history of this country and just what's happening in current day politics. I studied history, and my field of expertise, of course, was the history of thought, intellectual history, and the conflict of ideologies when it came to history as well. My studies brought me to the United States of America, and in 2013 I got into real estate. And real estate is a business where conflict and negotiations is at the very center of it all. And it was really hard. I made an effort to read any book or any materials I got my hands on to get better at actual real-life negotiations and conflict de-escalation. And 2 years into my being in real estate, especially after one very difficult transaction, I realized that I had two options moving forward. It was either learn and get better, really get better, or burn. So learn or burn. And I chose the former. Part of my process in getting better at conflict de-escalation and negotiations was to, of course, read as many books as possible. And I do have almost a decade's worth of experience in the industry, and also interviewing my colleagues, seeing what works for them. And now I'm a director of education and training for one of the largest real estate brokerages in the state of New Mexico, and I help a lot of brokers getting started in their business, and I see what works for them and what doesn't work for them. And also, as that learning process, I got involved with Toastmasters, which has been just a phenomenal help in my career development, and here I am. That's basically what got me here. That's how I got started, and that's how I'm still here.
So when you're training, that's part of your speaking career. I think people might not recognize when they think about speakers that, it's the keynote speaker up there on the big stage with the big crowds. But training and workshops in smaller groups are also part of this business.
Absolutely, and that's really my field, or has been for the most part of me being a speaker, is doing trainings and seminars and workshops. And I believe that part of any learning process, hands-on practice, is priceless. We can learn a theory as much as we like, but if we don't actually get to do it, it's like learning about socks but never having a chance to put them on. It's two different experiences of socks, right? Yeah. And I think, Gail, you know very well what it's like. Gail shared a little bit about her experience over the summer recently. So,
well, but if you're doing a workshop, are you doing like role playing, having people, you know, play the angry customer, or I mean, what kind of conflicts are you teaching about?
Yes, so we talk a lot about the psychology of sales, about psychology of persuasion. I'm butchering this word, persuasion, psychology of persuasion, and we talk about past conflicts, how to de-escalate different situations, and then we actually get into action. We make phone calls, we go through transactions side by side, and that's why the team is always next to our new brokers to make sure that how they start moving forward in this business is through that practice and getting better, analyzing and setting an intention for the conversation that may be really difficult for people. What are you going to say? How are you going to react? Then let's role play this and put it into practice. Let's see how it went. Let's learn from it. Let's do better next time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That really does help you learn what to do better the next time, because you're actually practicing it in a safe situation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned Toastmasters. In fact, we've both we're both in Toastmasters, and
yes, we are.
a particularly good club for advanced speakers is Albuquerque Challenge. I've been a member of that, and I think are you in another?
I'm in one more club, which is As We Speak Toastmasters, which is also considered an advanced club, but anyone is always welcome to join. And that's the beauty of Toastmasters. Everybody has their own learning plan, their own path that they choose to go down to depending on their needs and goals in life, and everybody has a place in Toastmasters. It's one of the most welcoming organizations really out there.
Mm-hmm. And sort of the difference between Toastmasters and the National Speakers Association, our New Mexico chapter, is we also look at the business of speaking, and we have speakers helping us to become better at that part of the business, as well as being better speakers.
Oh, absolutely. Those two organizations have been integral to me being where I am right now, because Toastmasters got me started how to work my materials, what works, how to tell a good story, and how to actually deliver that story and present myself. And when I got relatively good at it and started competing and got some positive feedback, I turned this into a business and looked for different professional avenues where I could take my skills to. And that's when National Speakers Associations has been just invaluable, to meet with people who have already done it before, who are open to welcoming you in and then supporting you and mentoring you. Again, you have to run with a pack of like-minded people to be a part of that pack, to be a good representative of that pack, and it really helps with overall goals, professional goals for really anybody who's looking into being a trainer, running workshops, having to do even presentations at work. You still have to use all of those skills that you get in Toastmasters and national speakers as well. National Speakers Association.
So are your target audiences primarily the real estate market?
I do. I mostly every day I work with real estate brokers or people who are getting into one or another aspect of real estate. And I also have been working with small businesses. I've also worked with politicians. And sort of on the side, I also do seminars on spiritual development. And those are public seminars once a month. Those are free to the public. And I run those. Several different topics there: how to handle negative energy, how to de-escalate your own emotions. Emotional de-escalation is a huge part of what I teach as well, in my sort of spiritual development seminars, but also negotiation and conflict de-escalation seminars, because it always comes down to the person. Where are you standing right now in your life? What is your emotional constitution? It plays a huge role in how to go into any conflict situation, how to negotiate on your behalf. You have to know where you stand and constantly be improving.
So your own workshops, people can find out about those on your website?
Yes, they can go to evafanari.com, and on the seminars, in the menu bar, there are seminars, and you can just sign up to get email notices. Do we meet in person or do we meet on Zoom, depending on the current situation? The next one actually is going to be on August 27th. So, and it's in person, which is a big deal to a lot of us.
Yay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
we're
know.
back to in person, but who knows what this pandemic has in store for us
I know.
yet.
So I think it has really taught us to be more flexible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So what are some misconceptions about your field and what you do that you could set people straight about?
Yes. So when I got into real estate first and I read all these materials and books, what I noticed was that something was not clicking. What I read from the books, it never played out that way in real life, in real conflict situations when the stakes were really high. And somebody buying or selling a house, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars online, up to millions of dollars online. So I started looking into it, and what I discovered really early is that the number one mistake that many of those books and materials make is that they assume that people are readable and predictable. And that's the greatest myth when it comes to any negotiations, and people who have actually been in the field having to de-escalate high-stakes situations will also tell you the same thing. People are unpredictable and they are unreadable. We can get some cues from them based on their body language, the words they use, how they speak, that they are stressed out. But what specifically are they stressed out about is completely unknown to us. And I would say that that's the greatest myth and the greatest hiccup that I had getting started in real estate. Too much assuming and too much thinking that we know what's going on in other people's heads, and we fully never know.
What one or two tips would you suggest if there is a tense situation? How can you break that tension and change the course of the interaction to be smoother and less stress-filled?
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure the tip I'm about to share is what everybody has already heard, and which is really difficult to actually follow when you are emotionally now invested and involved in a situation. And that would be become a better listener. Forget about yourself and those magical words, tell me more. That's it. And then you just be quiet and let the other person really explain, because oftentimes you'll find out that you are fighting on the same side. But the words we use and the way we speak may not be familiar to the other party, and therefore the conflict is fast to be brewing. And we never know what triggers one party or the other. Therefore, it's best to take a step back and lean into your own ability to listen.
Well, and you just said, take a step back and lean into your ability. So how does body language play into these interactions?
You have to keep yourself open, of course, open-minded, open-hearted, and sometimes in the negotiation industry, in real estate, we call this have a beginner's mindset. Go back to the very beginning as if you had no idea what was going on, you have no previous information about the situation, and go from that place, because then you truly step into the situation with curiosity as opposed to judgment or your own agenda. And when I say keep, of course, open mind and open heart, keep the front of your body open as well. We tend to kind of slouch away, or we tend to cross our arms sometimes, or put our hands in the pocket because we somehow want to close off our presence, but it's the other way around. That's the time to really step in and be open and listen.
Yes. Well, and speaking of listening, I'm looking forward to listening to your getting up on the stage in our Speakers Corner studio here, and you'll share with us some thoughts that we can take home with us. So we'll be right back after this short break while we transition over to the Speakers Corner stage with Eva Fanari.
born and raised in northeastern Europe in a small country called Estonia, but at the time of my birth, it was Soviet Union. My mom was a single mom, and my sister and my mom and I, we lived in a small village of about 1,000 people in one of those apartment complexes that you may know that existed in the Soviet Union, those big gray concrete conglomerates. Yes, that's where we lived. Towards the end of 1980s, when the Soviet Union was already falling apart and crumbling, that part of the village where I lived decided to pool their monies together and buy a big satellite dish to pirate TV channels from the West. Now, my mom wasn't able financially to participate in that whole production of getting that big satellite dish to pirate some channels, but we lived close enough to the actual dish that if we punched the TV in the right place and twiggled the buttons, we got those channels anyways. Now, if you think about it, we were pirating the TV channels from the pirates who were pirating the TV channels from the West, and the TV channels themselves were illegal to begin with. How exciting. I remember most of the channels, and most of them were something that I had no interest in, something from Italy, a whole bunch of channels from Germany, but I had just started studying English. And one of those channels was Sky TV from Great Britain. This was my first introduction to these great shows as Family Ties and Alfie, Bewitched, and then of course 21 Jump Street, because Johnny Depp was definitely something to sigh about. Well, let me take you back. Young Johnny Depp was definitely something to sigh about. My English wasn't that great, but I was just glued to the TV. And out of all those shows, the one that left the biggest impression to me was actually a Lipton Tea commercial. Yes, you heard that right. It was a Lipton Tea commercial. The commercial went something like this. There was a lady in a really big oversized sweater who walked across the stage with a big fluffy dog. She walked over to the armchair, sat down, and had a big glass mug of tea that was steaming, and it looked so wonderful. I couldn't have cared less for the dog, for the tea, or for the woman. But that armchair that she sat in changed my life. We didn't have official access to that satellite and those channels, so everything was black and white. I have no idea what color that armchair was. But when you just looked at it, it felt like a hug. And if you've ever wondered, how did the furniture look like in the Soviet Union? Let me fill you in. It was big, ugly, and really uncomfortable. There were about 5 models, and the entire Soviet Union had one version, some shade of brown, of that particular couch in their living rooms. And now think about, in late 80s, I was about 11 years old. And you know how when you're a kid, you can come up with any crazy scenario you can possibly think of in your life. And I looked at that armchair, and even in my craziest and wildest dreams, I had not been able to come up with that armchair. Something that shifted in me on that moment was the following. Once you see something, you realize that this can be reality. And at that moment, I realized that there is a world out there where there are actually people who have that armchair. And it just turned out that that world was speaking the English language. I don't know if you see where I'm going with this, but bear with me. As I told you, I lived in a small village. I didn't just live in the periphery of the Soviet Empire. I lived in the periphery of a small country within that Soviet Empire, and I lived in the periphery of that small village as well. And my only question at that point to me was, how can I get to where people have those beautiful armchairs? And at that time, I don't know if you realize, but it seemed like a task that could never be achieved. Have you ever had a dream when you just think about it and you feel like no point of even dreaming about it because you're never going to get there? That's how it felt like. And I started looking around me. What could help me get out of that village? It wasn't the finances, because I don't come from a family with a lot of means. And it wasn't connections either, because we didn't have those either, living in a remote place like that. But I noticed that the only way for me to get out of that situation was the grades. So I studied really hard. And I had examples in front of me, and not the examples you would think people have, like somebody who achieves everything they want in life, but more like I saw generation after generation of young women graduating from high school, and they would stay in that village because they fell in love with a boy, they would get pregnant, and 2 years later they would still get some odd job and have the same husband. And it's okay to have that life if you're really happy with that life. But none of them really looked happy. So I focused on my studies. I really paid attention to the English language. And remember, during the Soviet Union, English language was not the one the system was promoting, right? Because the big enemy, the Americans, were also speaking English. But let's fast forward now, and the Soviet Union in the meantime collapsed, came crashing down, things changed, Estonia became independent, and I was able to pull myself out of that village because of my grades. I remember now, just come with me for a moment, I am smack in the middle of my studies at the university, getting my higher education, and I tried to attend any English practice group that I possibly can. To learn a language, you really have to get into the weeds of things. To really learn anything in life, you have to get really, really good at practicing it. You have to be comfortable making mistakes. And one of those sort of workshops or clubs was put together by the US Embassy in Estonia. And then the year 2000 was rolling in, and do you remember people got really scared about the 2000 comes and there's going to be Armageddon? And one of those US diplomats was one of the people who was really scared that things was just going to collapse around us when 2000 happened. So he had stocked his garage full of all sorts of crazy stuff and supplies. And when 2000 came, well, nothing really happened. It was like any other morning the next morning. And he came to this club the following week and he asked me, Eva, you're a poor student. I have all these supplies that I now need to get rid of. Would you be interested in some? And of course I was interested in some. I was the poor starving student, right? And that's how I got introduced to Charmin Ultra Soft toilet paper. He had hundreds of packs of those in his garage. To this day, my favorite toilet paper, hands down in the entire world, that is the best toilet paper. I'm not getting any financial incentive from Charmin, just so you know. I was also introduced to Peter Pan Crunchy peanut butter. And I got a whole case of it. I sat down and I had 3 jars in one sitting, which glued my intestines together. But I loved it. I loved it. And guess what else was in that garage for grabs? There was an armchair, just like the one that was in that Lipton commercial. I froze. You know those moments when time and space comes to standing still around you? And I had that armchair and he asked me, oh, this old thing, you can take this one as well. It's fascinating to me how when a dream comes true, there are no fireworks. There's no big drama happening. It just happens because when you get really engrossed in the process of getting somewhere, that's where life is worth living. That's when you have fun. That's where your dreams really make sense. It has to be about the journey. Now, I bet you are really curious. What was so special about that armchair? And I guarantee you know that armchair. Today, having lived in this country for 15 years, I know that it wasn't nothing but your average lazy boy armchair. You know the one where you have a lever and you pull the lever and you get to kick your feet up and you get to really lay in it. Have you ever sat in it? Yeah, I bet you have. I bet you have. Even if you don't have one at home, I bet you have sat in one of those at somebody else's house then. And just so you know, that when you do sit in an armchair, when you have sat in that armchair, you live the highest dream of some 11-year-old girl out there. This world is packed with people who can't even dream of the life that most of us in this country have. They can't even imagine this life, let alone to dream about it. Something for you to be grateful for, especially if you're watching this. I know that you have a pretty good life that someone out there would give anything to have. And let's end on that note today. I invite you to find those little nuggets around you that seem so insignificant in your everyday, like sitting in an armchair, right? Every step you take, however, could be somebody's dream out there. And as you are finding gratitude in your everyday, know that if your dream today feels like, oh my God, it can never happen because it seems so far away, you too can get there. Just focus on the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. That was awesome. That was wonderful. So that is just a small taste of one of our members of the National Speakers Association New Mexico chapter. We invite you to come and join us at our meetings that we hold monthly. And in fact, we actually have 2 opportunities every month, either in person or online. You can learn more about our programs at NSA-NM.org. And do check us out. We would love to have more people who are interested in being professional speakers or just improving your own use of speaking in your business. So check us out, and thank you for joining us for today's episode of NSA New Mexico Speakers Corner. We'll see you next time.